So welcome to this part of the series where we're going to talk about how to write a guitar riff. Now, writing a riff is of course something that you can make really complicated or you can make it really simple. As with all the other episodes on this theme, we're going to stay by the theme keep it simple stupid, because trying to make something overly complicated, especially when you're not really experienced in this, is just going to slow down your process. You just have to realize that if you're not a master riff writer, you're not really good at this, you have to make something simple. It's much easier to make something simple that sounds good than to try and make something really advanced, which just ends up sounding like you don't really know what you're doing. So for this part of the video, we're going to make the riffs that are used in this demo song, which is based off of my post-mortem song from one of my albums. And I've simplified the riffs a bit, and I've added and removed some stuff, but we're going to talk a little bit about how I approach making a riff, how I approach it, doing it the simple way, and how I write some different styles of riffs. The first thing we're going to talk about is our foundation for the riffs, which is our scales. Now again, you don't really need to know the notes of the scale, you don't really need to know any theory behind it. You just have to know a couple of scales in order to get a good starting point and know what notes you can use in order to make it sound like it fits together, so that it just doesn't end up sounding like a mess of different notes. As I discussed in the music theory part of this series, here's our starting point for this. It's just a bunch of notes. I'll put the tabs on the screen, but these notes are what you're going to use in order to make your riff. You're going to use these notes for two things. You're going to use them for kind of the chord foundation of the riffs, which I'll get into later, and you're going to use them to make your power chords. Now the first riff we're going to look into is our one string metal riff. It's a really easy riff to make, and I have a really simple approach to making it. First thing we're going to start with is simply just kind of tremolo picking a string. Now if you can't do this steadily and you just have to practice rhythmically going 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. And when you got that down, you're going to try to slowly put in some notes here. So, and we're going to use notes from the scale. On the B string, we have the open string, we have 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, 8th fret, 10th fret, and our 12th fret. That's our simple starting point for this. So instead of just going, we're going to go like this maybe. And then we can speed it up. Using DistroKid is a great way to release your music to all the big streaming services like Spotify, iTunes, Google Music, whatever. And you can even leave a legacy, which means that even if you die, the music is still out there. If you pay just a small fee of $29 for a single or $49 for an album, DistroKid will keep your music online indefinitely, even if you're not alive to keep your membership up and going. And they will even pass along 100% of the earnings to you or whoever gets your earnings after you're dead. It's kind of a crazy feature, but it kind of shows what the mindset of DistroKid is like. It's a cheap, reliable service that is easy to use, and it's what I use. And it's what I will continue to use for as long as the service is available. So check out the link below to sign up for DistroKid, only $20 a year, and let's get back to the video. Now what you can see here that is, even though I'm putting in notes, I'm still kind of sticking to this foundation of tremolo picking this, and I'm just putting notes on top of that foundation. And that's how we're going to approach making most riffs. You want a constant rhythm going. Of course you can make other rhythms and stuff, but we're keeping it simple here. Or you can go like this. So you're just going to play along with putting in different notes. And as long as you're sticking to the scale, it's going to sound like you know something about what you're doing. So that's the one string riff. It's a really simple riff to make, and it's not really that different in approach to how I make my other riffs. Now, if we're going to involve more strings, we can always make a power chord based riff, like this, for example. Now that's just something I made up, but I'm still using the same foundation of notes. And what I'm doing is I'm just I'm picking from this E string where we have this foundation. And for each note, I'm building a power chord on top of it. Now, when you're going to build a power chord, you're just going to take the root note. You're going to go one string down, 2 frets up. Play those 2 strings. And for the open string, you're just going to play the 2nd fret on the string below. And you can do this with the entire foundation. You can go. And you can build power chords on the entire neck if you want to. Now, you're going to use the same foundation, the same principle of sticking to a bass, which we're still just going to keep on the open B string. And then we're just going to, instead of just putting in random notes there, we're going to put in power chords. And then you can play along with sliding around. And I'm still just making sure that I'm filling in the gaps between the power chords with and by filling in these gaps, you kind of keep the rhythm flowing. And the last part about how I write my riffs is going to be how do I change this bass from making it sound like it's all about this, it's all going in this B minor chord. Well, the thing you do is that you kind of change the foundation from going from this to, for example, this. And you're still using the notes that you have at your disposal. So we're going to use one of the other riffs, which I'm using in this song, which goes like this. And what I'm doing here, notice that I'm doing things on this E string. While I'm sticking on this rhythmic foundation on the low B string, but I'm changing from the 8th fret to the 10th fret. And you can use this principle for anything. instead of just going back to this, you can go back to other strings. So you can go like so you can do anything. You can just, as long as you stay to these notes that you have at your disposal, you can play around with these notes as much as you want, and just keeping it rhythmic, keeping it within the scale is going to make it sound good, as long as you just practice doing it and get used to it. One last trick, and this is the last, I promise, you can do while making a riff, is you can also hop between the octaves. So as I discussed in another video here, when you hop around with octaves, you can use it for an effect in your riffs. So for example, so you can always throw in some octaves. So now that we've discussed how we make some riffs, it's time that we record these riffs, and we're going to see what it sounds like. Now when you've finished your song, you need to release it somewhere, and the best service out there to release your music is through DistroKid. DistroKid is a service where you basically just pay $20 a year and you can release as much music as you want to all the big services like iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, Google Music, YouTube Music, anything. And they've also added some new cool features lately, including the synchronized global release, which basically lets you ignore time zones when you release music. So that if you release music on a specific date, people around the world can listen to it instantaneously and don't have to wait until their time zone says the same time as the country that you released it in, and so on. It basically gives you the power to control the time zones of your music releases.